Awesome. So I'm going to be talking about Self protocol, which is a zkPassport protocol that we built and launched about 1.5 years ago. And so it's been in production for about 1.5 years ago, for 1.5 years. And I just want to talk a little bit about how it works and also some lessons learned from that time. Now, since this is an invited talk, I thought I'd break the mold a little bit and make this a little more fun for you guys. And so we're going to play a little game. It's called Guess the Country. So on my slides, I'm going to have a few different shapes of different countries sprinkled at random places on the slides. And so your goal is to guess the shape of that country and then yell it out as soon as you've guessed it. Don't wait for a pause in the talk, just yell. I'm used to people yelling at me. I will not take offense. We can make this fun so you guys can compete. Looks like there's 3 zones. So the 3 zones can kind of team up and compete. We're going to make this easy for you initially. So just as a warm-up, what country is this? Okay, I think the left side, my left side, is already in the lead. What about this one? Okay, I think I heard France over here, so I think it's 1-1. I did hear some guesses from the middle, but I think you guys were slower, so you got to speed it up. Now, this is not arbitrary. You know, to build a zkPassport protocol, you have to stare a lot at the different certificates that many different countries around the world use for signing their passports. And so all of the countries that you see here today are ones that we support in the protocol and more. So this is not arbitrary. There is a sense to the madness, but it's also fun. Okay, so I think I heard it here first. So I think that's 2-1. You know, we live in a world now where, you know, this is not a crazy question to ask. It's kind of insane. Certainly, it's changed a lot in the last year. And ironically, it's not just a question that we have to ask when interacting with things online. It's a question that agents have to ask as well, because they themselves don't know. And so this is increasingly a problem. And of course, because it's also really easy now to deepfake a fake ID, you know, this is becoming a very difficult problem to ultimately solve. Are you a Sybil is a long-standing question that, you know, has been around since obviously the invention of Bitcoin. And to this day, you know, unless you want to burn a lot of electricity, it still isn't really solved in a satisfying way. Another question that pops up a lot on the internet. Does anybody know who was first? I'm going to go over there. So 2-2, still 0 in the middle. Come on, guys. There's a lot of countries now that are issuing age restrictions for social networks. Increasingly, this is an interesting question. We've also seen the inverse. Are you young enough? Pop up too, especially on dating sites. Seems like that question does pop up in that context as well. And then as we saw with the kind of drama around Fable being kind of restricted under export control for a brief period, increasingly this question of are you from, you know, some country is popping up as an important question outside of, you know, all the AML, Bank Secrecy Act regulation that, you know, governs why people have to KYC when opening a bank account. But even outside of those use cases, increasingly these kinds of questions are popping up for very legitimate reasons. And so already a few years ago, Rosenberg et al. Put out this paper, ZK Creds, highly recommend reading it. I think Ian, who's on the paper here, I saw him walking around yesterday. I don't know if he's around today. You know, they realized that a lot of passports these days are cryptographically signed. You know, these biometric passports that you may have come across with this little logo and this rectangle logo with the circle in the middle. That means that there's a little microchip in it. The microchip has your passport data that's been cryptographically signed by your issuing country. zkCred realized that we could use this to create interesting zk credential proofs. And it's a fascinating read. And one way to think about self is kind of a production implementation of this idea. Anybody going to guess this country? Denmark. I think I heard it first here. 3-2-0. And we're really excited. You know, we think that this is really interesting technology. Is that a country? Vietnam is right. 4-2-0. And again, it's been in production for a year and a half now, fully audited by zk Security, now serving many, many different use cases, which we'll talk about at the end. And the thing that I think we did that's maybe a little bit different than the zkCred paper is we extended this to more than just passports. We extended this to certainly many passports from many countries, but also many biometric IDs by many countries. Increasingly, nations are issuing national ID cards that have the same NFC chip that allows you to read, cryptographically signed data about yourself. Ukraine is right in the middle. Let's go. 3-2-1, I think. But then also Aadhaar recently launched, well, now it's a few years ago now, in India, which is their own biometric ID format using QR codes. Very, very high penetration in India. So increasingly, there's billions and billions of people who now have biometric IDs. And we've worked really, really hard to support all of these at self so that you can then create these zk proofs using these IDs. And a nice thing about using these IDs for answering those questions that we just had earlier in the beginning is that they tend to be difficult to obtain. People tend to keep them safe. And again, because they're biometric, they are machine readable. Anyone want to guess this country? Is there a new name for that country? Czechia is right. By technicality, I'm sorry. 3-3-1. And so how does this ultimately work? So each ID is signed by a document signing certificate, which in turn is signed by a country signing certificate authority. And so if you want to verify the authenticity of a passport or one of these IDs, you just have to verify these signatures going up this chain. And if you know the public keys or the certificates of every country in the world, then you can verify the authenticity of any document that you come across. Of course, these certificates are made public, and so anyone can verify these things. And the really nice thing about blockchains is we can now start verifying these things without a counterparty. So the way that Self works, we have a Merkle root of all of these certificates on chain, and we can actually verify that these certificates or these signatures are correct without you having to give your ID to any third party to judge whether or not it's legitimate and whether or not it hasn't been forged. All of that can now happen in a fully decentralized way on chain. And since we use zk snarks, it's also done in a fully private way. Who here, just out of curiosity, likes giving their passports or ID information to some third party? Who loves doing KYC? Do we have one person who scratched themselves without a raised hand, or was that just a scratch? Right. Nobody likes giving your data to third parties. There's been a lot of leaks lately, and it's just so nice that now with these biometric IDs, we can actually do this in a fully private and decentralized way. And once you've effectively proven, what was that? Sweden is right. I think it's 3-2-3. Is that right? But Norway was close. A lot of people guessed Finland, but which is also close, but not quite right. So once you can prove that you have a valid ID, then you can do interesting things where you can start proving statements about the facts that are on that ID. And that's pretty exciting because you can prove those things without revealing anything about yourself. So for example, the am I old enough case, you can prove that you are over, say, the age of 18 without revealing your date of birth or anything else on your ID. This is something that's supported by Self today and just really quite elegant. You can prove that you're not from a certain country or a set of countries. You can prove that you're not on the OFAC list, which is kind of a US Treasury managed sanctions list, again, without revealing your ID number, without revealing your date of birth, your name. So you can prove really interesting things about yourself fully privately. Now you can also prove that your first name is what you say it is. You can reveal information without revealing everything else. So you can either selectively reveal parts of your ID, or you can prove statements derived on top of your ID information with full privacy. And that's something that took us a lot of time to do, and we're really proud about how this works now. It just creates so much utility for anybody building with Self. Okay, so what does the experience look like? Canada is right. 413? No, 423. What does it look like? So this is the onboarding flow. Somehow the animation is not going, which is weird. Maybe because I'm not connected to the internet here. I'll just describe what's going on. So first step is to scan your ID, either your passport or, we also support scanning national IDs, as I mentioned before. And the first step is to scan the MRZ zone, which is that machine-readable zone. It looks kind of written. It's a fixed width text set of characters that usually you see on the bottom of your ID with a whole bunch of chevron characters. We need to scan that because that's used as a password to then decrypt the data on the NFC. Once you've scanned that, you then tap your ID to your phone, and we read the data that is in the chip, including the signatures, and then we generate the zkP to prove that that document is in fact valid, again, using the Merkle root of all known certificate authorities by all the issuing countries as a public input. And we do this, and the animation is really nice because it shows how quick this is. This is a really fast onboarding flow. We worked really hard to make the zkP generation really fast, and we'll talk a little bit later about how we did that. But that was a really important piece for us. And all of this, of course, is on mobile, which again, we'll talk about how we did this. It's quite difficult. Croatia is right, 3-3-2. So what are we doing during registration? We're mostly generating that zkP that's proving that you have a valid ID by checking those certificates. But we also use the nullifier Merkle tree model that is so common now in many applications, including Tornado Cache and others, effectively allowing you to register once. So you only have to prove that you have a valid ID once. And then after that, all subsequent proofs are mostly just a Merkle inclusion proof in this registration tree, which kind of looks like this. And to Chile, that's right, 4-2-3. And we do this primarily so that subsequent proofs are both fast. So this tree is using Poseidon for hashing, but also so that your issuing country can't see what you're doing with Self. And that's really important. And the way that that is done is by having the user create a secret, which we automatically back up for the user, which effectively is used to derive this commitment to both their ID data and to their secret. We put that commitment in this registration tree, and then later on, folks can just prove that they're in the tree to then make subsequent proofs around their data, which again is much faster and critically makes all subsequent proofs private, even in the eyes of someone who has access to your passport or ID information. So this is now, what was that? Switzerland's right. 442? I think it's 442. Again, animation is not working, apologies, but this would show the flow for how we make those subsequent proofs about statements derived from your ID. These are typically proofs that are requested by third-party developers. So you might be accessing some website, it wants to check your age, it pops up a QR code, you scan the QR code with the app, it lists what the website is asking of you, what it wants you to reveal. And if you agree to prove those things, you can just press a button, and then it generates the proof again very quickly, and then you're off to the races. And so here, as I mentioned before, you're mostly doing this Merkle inclusion proof. That is correct. I think this side just took the lead now. 4-5, I think. I think the middle still needs to catch up. I believe in you guys. And the nice thing about this is, again, you don't have linkability, but you can also do Sybil resistance at the application layer because we have this nullifier that is still per application that's used here, and you can verify that the nullifier hasn't been used before. How does this all look like from an architecture perspective? That's right. Tied it up, 552. We have your ID or your passport. We have the mobile app. We cloud back up your secret so that even if you lose your phone, you don't get locked out of your account. And then I mentioned that we worked really hard to make proving really fast and snappy. And sadly, for many reasons, we weren't able to do this on the mobile phone in a way that was satisfactory. There's some countries out there that have very complicated signature and hash signature schemes and hash functions that they use for these certificate chains. And it's just not really feasible to do that in a quick way on a mobile phone. And so what we do is we accelerate the proof creation to a TEE. The TEE receives the data only after the mobile app has verified the attestation from that TEE to verify that it is actually running what it expects. After generating the proof, the TEE deletes the data, and so it still remains fully private. Critically, this TEE is not running in some decentralized fashion where someone might have physical access and may want to side channel attack it. It's running in the Google Cloud. And so if you trust Google, I think it's pretty safe to assume that your data will always be fully private. And then we automatically write on behalf of the user to the Cella blockchain where we store this registry of people who have signed up. Okay, so what are some use cases in the wild that we've seen over this last year and a half? We've seen Sybil-resistant rewards. This was a very popular one. Like early on, a bunch of different DeFi protocols got interested in doing boosted rewards for individuals up to a certain cap. So if you want to give individuals higher yield, say, you can do that if you solve the Sybil problem, and one way to solve the Sybil problem, of course, is using self. And so Stabila, which is kind of an incentive DAO, frequently runs boosted reward campaigns for the following projects. So Aave, Uniswap, Morpho, actually Velodrome, I think, is also on here. And Merkle now has native support for this. So if you're building a protocol and you are already talking to Merkel about doing your rewards, you can use Self to offer boosted rewards for individuals. And so typically the way this works is maybe you say up to $1,000, you get twice the incentive, and then nobody else can just spin up 1,000 accounts to drain your incentive pool because they have to generate one of these Sybil-resistant proofs. Private compliance is another. USA is right. I think you guys took the lead again, 652. We're pretty stoked about this. So USAT just launched on Celo today. USAT is a Genius Act compliant stablecoin issued by Anchorage in partnership with Tether. And starting next week, on Google Cloud, you will be able to claim some free USAT if you prove these things about yourself, that you're over 18 years old, that you're not a Sybil, and you are not on the OFAC list. Who here thinks that all of these criteria apply to them? I would be very surprised if it's not all of you. So that means, definitely come and follow maybe Self XYZ on Twitter. You'll see the announcement for this again next week, and you'll be able to go and just claim some free stable coins from Google's cloud website. So they're calling this their mainnet faucet. It's part of their whole faucet kind of infrastructure. Definitely check it out. We're very, very excited about this. Obviously, they're a big partner to be launching something like this. This one's interesting, private takedown requests. So who here has found data about themselves on the internet, like their address, phone number, things that they don't want necessarily to be out there? Turns out if you just search for your name and your address, you may be surprised to see how many data brokers have that information just available for anyone to find. Highly recommend doing it. If you want to take that data down, it turns out that the way to do that is you have to scan your ID and email it to these brokers. And then they'll be like, oh, okay, we trust that you're who you say you are. Okay, we'll take it down. The irony is, of course, you're trying to do this for more privacy, not to give your ID information places where it can leak, and therefore, compromise your privacy. So Self is another great way of doing these types of things privately, and we're working with a pretty prominent player in this space around this. Universal basic compute, I think this is the last use case. Increasingly, we live in a world where we may not have jobs anymore soon. And UBI's claim to be a solution to this, but it's politically been a little challenging. Let me just get rid of this. And so universal basic compute is a nice alternative where you're just giving people LLM compute so they can still do things potentially to make money, even if the whole job industry collapses. But of course, you have a huge Sybil resistance problem, and so UBC Now, which is one player in this space, is using Self to basically prove that you are a unique individual to basically get around this problem. Okay, and this is just my last slide. So we talked about, did I hear something? That's right. I think that might mean that you just took the lead on this side. Yeah, I think, we've come a long way since that zkCred paper. I think one of the things that was the most insane was just how complicated supporting this was for all the different countries that are out there. Even though there's these ICAO standards, turns out that there are just an insane amount of permutations of all the different hashing functions and signature schemes that are permissible. Even going up the chain, we've seen some countries choose to change which hashing functions and signature schemes they use. We've also seen documents that claim that they're using one, but when you look, it's actually using a different one, so they're actually encoding this incorrectly. And so just a lot of work went into supporting every different biometric ID format that's out there. Yeah, it resulted in 30 permutations of all of these different hashing functions and signature schemes. That then had a huge impact on how many circuits we had and on the number of proving keys we had to do. So we're using Groth16. So we have a lot of proving keys, 86 proving keys, and 86 circuits. And the largest key was 5 gigabytes in size, too big to download on a mobile phone, which again is why we did the whole acceleration inside the TE. The other interesting thing was decentralization wasn't that important to some customers, honestly to many customers. Instead, what they asked for is that you supported every ID, not just the biometric IDs. And so we worked really hard to work with a centralized KYC provider to effectively support every identity format out there. And if your ID doesn't support a biometric, isn't a biometric ID, doesn't have that little chip in it, then of course it's not fully decentralized. You have to trust the centralized KYC provider, but we did work with them to delete the data after they've verified your document, and so it's still net-net better privacy than traditional KYC. Yeah, if you have any questions for me, definitely come find me. I'll be outside. But yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you. Or do we have time for questions now?
We've run over a bit, but we have time for maybe one quick question.
Maybe I'll ask one. Thank you, Marek. This was super interesting. Hopefully, this is going to get adopted widely. One thing you said is you could also prove that you're not on OFAC lists, but I thought the OFAC list was private. So how do you? It's public?
No, it's public.
I see. So
yeah, it's public, and what we do, actually, it's interesting how we do this. So we do 3 Merkle exclusion proofs in zero knowledge, and we construct the roots of those trees daily because this list changes daily. And so every time it changes, we generate these Merkle exclusion trees, and we do that because sometimes you have an ID document used to identify someone. Other times you may only have the name and the date of birth, and so we need to create different trees for different types of ways that someone is identified. And so that's how we do it, and yeah, it is public. You can look it up. If you just look up the US Treasury sanctions list, you'll find it. Annoyingly, it's in XML.
Great talk, thank you. Just real quick, the data that's being used to verify or that you're pulling from the passport itself, is that actually touching your infrastructure and then being passed to a third-party provider, or is it passed directly to them? How are you handling the interchange of that information?
Yeah, so we never share your personal information if you have a biometric ID with us or a third party. So your mobile app is the thing that scans it and has access to the data. And then ideally, you would generate a zkP directly on the phone. But again, the proving keys are too big. Proving times are quite slow. So what we do is we send that using an encrypted channel to a TE that's running an image that is compiled and is generated from source that's open source, so everyone can verify it. Only if that image matches what the app expects it to be, using a TE attestation, will your data be sent to that TE, and then the TE generates the zkP, sends it back to you, and then deletes your data. And so we don't see your data on that TE, and you can verify that by looking at the source code, and neither does any third party.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, let's thank our speaker again.